Love coming to B-Sides Augusta so much. Today, been looking forward to this. Already got the dates for next year. It's on my calendar. But let me take you back in time just a little bit. Year was 2015. Year was 2015. And this idea of what is it going to look like to go start to work at a new company. And I talk about this idea of what are 3 things that you can do to fix your culture today. And if we have time, I've actually got 4 things. We'll see how this goes with this topic. But as I think about what does culture actually mean, well, we can look at the dictionary, we can figure that out and try to understand that a little bit better. And maybe it can give us a better vocabulary, a little bit better language to understand when I talk about culture, what does that look like? But I remember back when, okay, 2015, I was recruited to go be the Chief Information Security Officer at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. You've heard of them, their name's on the money that we spend and go do things. And I had a great job before that. I knew the culture. I'd worked there for a while. I knew how things kind of played out there and how things worked there. But as they asked me to consider going to work literally right there, I had a bunch of questions. Sure, I wanted to know about compensation, that's important, benefits, yep, insurance, yep, family and kids that need, well, whatever we need health-wise. But if you were to go back to the HR recruiter that recruited me for over a year to go there, and you were to somehow place him right here, and you were to ask the question, what's the number one question Russell asked before making that job decision? It was around, well, that word from the previous slide, the culture. What's it like to be there? Well, I like being there. Well, they like me being there. And those are legit questions. I want to know that. Those of you who's changed jobs and you're like, I know what it's like here, but what about there? And honestly, the only way I could find out was when I go to my previous boss and I say, hey, boss, I think I'm going to go work there instead. But what I cared the most about was the culture. Was I going to like to be there? How could I understand that? What are some questions I could ask to help me put myself in a position before it was too late to know that perhaps I did a bunch of things? See, I knew about, I had to take 2 classes in economics in college, so surely I knew how a bank worked, but how an organization like that operates, the things that are important to them, was something that was kind of tricky to me. So what I want to do is walk through 3 steps, if we had extra time, a bonus step, to help you understand the language, some things that you can do to make a better culture where you're at right now. So some of those steps, these ideas, things that you can do to fix your culture today. So the first one is maybe a little bit non-technical, but maybe a little bit of a surprise afternoon at Security B-Sides Augusta. Can you believe it's like the 10th time they have that? I can't even believe it. But this idea of an elevator speech. So have you heard of, you've seen, you've maybe studied or even practiced an elevator speech before? Any heads nodding, any hands up? Yeah, so the premise is this idea, let's just imagine this pretend scenario, where in this pretend scenario, an executive, a boss, someone with an important title gets on the elevator and kind of awkward. It's like, I don't know what to say. Do I even get to talk to them or not? And actually some executive elevators, actually, like when the executive gets on it, it just goes like straight up to their floor because they're important and things like that. But if the awkwardness fades and someone who might be your boss's boss looks at you and says, what do you do here? What do you say? What are the what do you say? Little as possible, because you don't want to get fired because it's your boss's boss. And you, wow, I see you on TV, but I don't really see you up in my space. How do we think about ways to communicate what's going on, the things that are the most important? We're kind of trapped. And so initially, maybe nervously, we'll say, well, I do cyber things. I block the bad people, the APTs. I say some acronyms. I talk about packets. I talk about blocking and attacking and red teaming and blue teaming and all the things that we could talk about when it's just us. But what about the not us? What about the leaders, the decision makers, those whose names might actually be on our paycheck? They don't come to B-sides. They don't go to classes. They don't learn things and spend time in our echo chamber. So while we do the blue team and we do the red teams and we do all the things that we do, GRC, all the things that we do, those are important. When someone who's not at B-sides Augusta asks what are the things that we do, is there a better way? And this is not taking away from the security things that we do, the risks that we treat, the problems that we solve, the servers that we patch, and the applications that we pen test. It's not taken away from any of those things at all. But what if we spoke in a language where that executive, that leader, that boss could understand it just a little bit better? And so the first hack for ways to change the culture has a different approach. What if we decided to not just be technical and cyber and all the things we do, but what if we decided that we wanted to learn how to speak another language? Does anyone else speak more than one language? Anyone bilingual? What languages do you speak? Spanish. English, clearly, and Spanish. You bilingual. Someone in the back raise their hand? Yes, sir. Little German and English. Now, I have to take your word on both of those, but you have that skill, you have that ability, if you had to, or maybe you do a lot, able to speak another language. So what I want to do in this hack here is to help you speak another language. You're like, well, Russell, how do you do that? I don't have an app. There's not a Duolingo. How can we speak another language? What if we speak not Spanish, not German, and all the other languages that you know and speak, but what if we learn how to speak the language of business? What if we became bilingual and were able to speak the language of business? And one way to do that is to maybe spend a little bit of time on your company's website or your intranet site and kind of look at the mission. I've worked at a lot of places. That just means I'm old. I've done a lot of things old. I've never worked at a place that existed because of cyber. Like, that's not the reason. That's not the mission. We exist because of cyber. There could be places like that. I've not worked at places like that. So let's try this exercise. Let's just pretend I had the authority and made all of us here as CISO of a company named TED. Like, you've probably seen, heard, maybe one of you has given a TED talk before. It's kind of like on my goal list. One of the days I want to be able to do that. But let's just pretend right now that we become all Chief Information Security Officers of the company whose name is there on the screen. Does anybody know what the mission statement, the reason why the company TED exists? It's just 2 words. Just 2 words. A lot of mission statements are like a bunch of words and a bunch of things, and you had like a long T-shirt to put all the words on there. But TED, the company, 2 words: to spread ideas. The reason TED, the company, exists is to spread ideas. So those of you who've watched a TED talk before, what do you think? Did they do a good job or a bad job at achieving the mission? See a couple of thumbs up, a couple of nods. Are they spreading ideas? It seems like they do a good job of spreading ideas. So if somehow us and this job I just gave us, isn't it cool? We're all CISOs of the same company, TED, the company. And we were on an elevator, if they have elevators at TED, and an executive who's in charge of and running TED, instead of responding to cyber things and APT things and blue teams and red teams and pen test and GRC and all the things that we do that are important, what if we said, hi, I'm Russell, I'm the Chief Information Security Officer, and what do I do here? Just 2 words. I spread ideas. The what is the mission. The how might be blue team. The how might be preparing for the next board briefing or the next audit that's coming or the next thing that needs to happen in my specific role. But in speaking the language of business, it might just be a good idea. I believe it's a good idea. I found it to be a good idea to help people that understand how to run and operate businesses to connect what I'm doing and what you're doing and what all of us are doing on a daily basis without making them go learn cyber or get a degree or get a certification in our chosen field. So what would it look like if we tried a better way for our elevator speech of, I spread ideas? Now, I picked TED because TED's a company we probably heard of, and we looked at their talks, and thinking about that, this idea of how we might be able to do that. Still being respectful of the things that we know, the teams that we might be privileged to lead, even if we're just leading ourselves. How can we make it easier for folks to understand the why behind the what of what we have done? So what could be the wisdom in this first step might be, what if you looked at your job descriptions? What if you look at your mission statement? What if you said, you know what, my homework, which I don't have the power, but if you were to write down, I'm going to go figure out the mission of my company and make it easier to communicate why you're doing the things that you're doing and how it connects, how you're being bilingual, speaking cyber and speaking business. What if your job description had something about that? Like if we worked at TED, if somehow maybe it led off with, I'm going to do these cyber things because TED, the company, exists because, 2 words, they want to spread ideas. What if your job annual performance review, like when you have that uncomfortable conversation with your boss, your leader, your manager, your supervisor at the end of the year where they kind of evaluate how'd you do? And for a lot of us, the percentage of your annual bonus or your raise or your incentives or whatever financial compensation depends on how well we did our job. What if we were incentivized to help people see how the things that we're doing help at TED, the company, better spread ideas? What if we were rewarded or compensated or incented in some way to help us communicate and do that there at TED, the company? How did I help? How did you help? How did we help spread ideas in this totally made up real world example? Now, if you choose to do this, I believe that this will only cost you time and not cost you any money at all if you spread ideas. So the wisdom in the step could be, if you wanted to be clear for helping people who don't do what we do, people understand what us people do, perhaps using that language could be helpful there. So again, this idea we could fix or modify or alter or copy-paste the words from our company's mission and say, here's what I do. Maybe it's a small, teeny tiny contribution to help show what you're doing and how it fits in the larger plans of your respective organization. And again, not taking away from anything, all the things that you and the teams that you lead and things that you've done, and it's not taking away or minimizing that at all. It's leading with a language, it's leading with a vocabulary that your leaders can ideally better understand. So, step 2, non-tech, non-cyber way to fix your culture today is to do what I call a calendar audit. So raise your hand if your calendars looked like my calendar before. Yeah. What's the most number of meetings you've had at the same time on your calendar? Anybody had 2, 3? 97 meetings at the same? Okay, so clearly you win. I was thinking like 2, 3, 4, 5, 97? Wow. 97 things. So I thought I had problems. Wow, that's impressive. What I found is it's very easy to be busy. Like, you don't have to do anything. You can be busy, like, very, very easy. Meetings come in, you get on committees, you get on work streams, you get on work groups. Your calendar can look like this or worse without having to do a whole lot of work. It's really easy to be busy. What's hard is to work on things that matter the most. When I was a CIO and CISO at the Atlanta Fed, At the beginning of the year, my boss, the second in command, gave me a list of things. He said to me, here's the things that you're going to do, get done through others, all the things you're going to do, and you've got some portion of the year to get that done. And I've been around, I've been working long enough to know that at the end of the year, that same boss would evaluate how well did I do the things that he, in that case, told me to do. And I thought, how can I position myself for success? I decided what I didn't want to do is have a conversation with my boss that says, hey, you might not have done the math, you might not have looked at my calendar, but I just want you to know at the end of the year, this whole year, my highlight for my year is I went to 4,321 meetings. Isn't that why you hired me? You wanted me to go to those meetings? Because I didn't have to do anything. I just had to keep on clicking the accept button. Yep. And if I did nothing, I was going to be set up for failure instead of set up for success. So I thought, I've got attention. I want to go to the meetings. I want to maybe see some colleagues or get an update on a status. But if not careful, and honestly, if you're not careful, you're not going to be set up for success at all. You're not going to be set up for success. I want to get some stuff done. GSD, I want to be able to get stuff done. How can I get stuff done? So when I was privileged to be there, the CIO of the Fed, the Atlanta Fed, called everyone together. I only did that occasionally. Everyone together, everyone else privileged to lead. Okay, hey, I want to give you permission. Let's try an experiment. And this experiment was, every time you get a new meeting invite, hey, come to this meeting, we'll meet every Wednesday at noon for whatever important reason is there. If there's not an agenda, you have my permission to say no. And there's like gasp in the room. Wait, you can do that? You can say no? I thought there was just to click the accept to move on because I got emails coming in all the time. And wait, you can do that? And I said, yes. And to make it better, you can click no and you can blame me. Like if you want to type, my boss told me that I could say no, blame me, I'm totally okay with that. Now, the neat thing was I didn't go to my boss and say, hey, boss, I want to do this experiment for hundreds of folks I was privileged to lead, but instead, I kind of just did it. What was fascinating was never got in trouble, and once every few weeks, someone I was privileged to lead, they come up to me and smile really big. Hey, I got some time back. I'm actually getting some work done, and my work is not going to all those millions and millions of meetings. And somehow, progress continued to happen. And for folks, some of the folks who are like, I'm not sure, I believe you and all these things, I said, well, hey, maybe you can reply tentative. There's another button that may be not used at all when your meeting invites come through. Get a tentative meeting. And what is it that you need from me? How specifically are you looking for my contribution at this meeting before I go in and say, yes, I'll go and contribute in this way, because of having that clarity. Another hack, if you use iCal on the Mac, which is what I've got, or maybe use Microsoft Outlook, when you set up a meeting, what time does a meeting always start? It kind of starts at the top of the hour. And the default meeting typically is an hour long. So you're like, wow, that's very expensive. I've got an idea. So if you could help me with this idea, we can go in business, we can go on Shark Tank, we can be rich. I've got this idea that when you click on a meeting, it says, I want to invite all these people. And you just imagine that everyone makes $100 an hour. And I know not everyone does. But for math purposes, 10 people times $100 an hour, there's a financial cost of the meeting. And before you can click send, if there was a little pop-up window, and nobody likes pop-up windows, but if a pop-up window came up and said, here's the expense of this meeting, are you sure you're going to pinky swear that you're going to expect to get that much value out of the meeting before you click send? It seems like financially there's an opportunity. Let me know. My contact information is coming up at the end. I think we can do a lot of good. But what if before you make that and we go on to Shark Tank and make a lot of money, what if you did a little hack? What if you introduced a constraint that says, you know what, if I have back-to-back meetings or bunches of meetings, I literally can't go from one building to another or from one office to another unless I introduce a constraint. What would it look like to have the constraint of being able to have a little bit less time, stand out, and actually get some other stuff done? Am I anti-meeting? Do I just hate me? Some meetings are necessary, some are important. I'm not saying don't ever have a meeting. I'm thinking of, from a financial stewardship perspective, as a way to stand out. So a lot of folks aren't doing things like this. We'd have the opportunity to be really good stewards. When I was commuting, the traffic in Atlanta is just terrible, terrible, terrible. Live 25 miles away from the office, which means about an hour in each direction, sometimes even more. Something I decided I would do is, what are 3 things that only I, as the leader, could do? That's not saying I'm better, not saying none of those things. It's just saying some things, if I didn't do them, they just didn't get done. Maybe approving someone's promotion, letting them go to training, whatever it might be. But this idea of assigning myself some things to hold myself responsible for the duties that I had. And then on the way home, thing number 1, thing number 2, thing number 3. On the occasion where I did all 3, I would really be happy with myself and say, that's awesome, great, great, great. It's good to do that. But this idea of how can I look for ways, look for things that only I could do, to recognize that some things just required that to be done. And so the wisdom to that is, it's really easy, super easy to be busy. It's really hard, it's very difficult to say, what are the things that matter the most? What are some of the things that only I and you and we can do? And how can we intentionally focus on just doing those things before doing other things? What are some things that only we can do? So thing number 3, lesson number 3 is, and ways to fix your culture today, think about this idea of free fuel. So we all care about the environment. As a matter of fact, I rented a car to drive from Atlanta to here, and it was actually a hybrid. I've never driven a hybrid until right now. I thought, this is kind of neat. It's kind of like driving a golf cart, but not very entertaining. I'm like, maybe we should have one of these. So we care about that because we care about the world and our environment and the place that we live, and we worry about this quite a bit. And we think eventually, the cost, the expense of putting fuel in our vehicles, that really adds up. Thinking, is there a way to think about that in how we lead and how we show up? What if we talked about not battery-powered cars and hybrid-powered cars and gasoline or diesel-powered cars, but what if we thought about fuel a little bit differently? Any fans of Disney besides me? A couple of you, yeah. So the former EVP of Disney, Lee Cockrell, wrote this book, and in his book he talked about this concept of what would it look like to burn free fuel. Last time I filled up with gas, it was like the opposite of free. Prices just been what they are. But he talks about it in a different way. And this formula of A and R and E. What it would look like if we thought about appreciation, recognition, and encouragement. Again, whether we're privileged to lead very large teams, we're leading ourselves, being a part of the team, what would it look like if we focused just a little bit of time, maybe a little bit of time every day, by recognizing and appreciating and encouraging those that we're privileged to work with? What if instead of trying to catch people doing something wrong, like clicking on a link or not patching their things or not going to secure coding class or whatever those things are that we want folks in our organization to do, what if we focused instead, hey, I saw what you did. And it was a really good thing, it was a really powerful thing, catching folks trying to do something good. And that's what I did. When I was at the Fed, I would have on my calendar, whenever I was in the office, first 30 minutes, I would get a coffee cup, and I'd fill it up with coffee and walk around. How are you doing? What are you working on? How's it going? Did you watch the game? How's the family? How's the things you're working on? And what was I doing? Trying to be nosy into their business, disturb them? No. My thought process was, what if they needed help? understanding why policy was in place or why we were focused on a particular item or an initiative or an objective. Or maybe they need someone to click an approve button or ask questions. Or I didn't really understand that last all hands meeting where you said I didn't have to go to meetings. Seriously? You're going to cover that? You got me covered? What if we put ourselves in this position to be able to listen and learn and be able to put ourselves in a position to be available? Especially for those of you who've been at your organization for a long time, you just know stuff. You know how to get things done. You know how business is done. New people, find new guys and find new gals, FNG, the new people who aren't able as easy to navigate, what questions do they have? What questions did you have, the you from 2 years ago? The things you didn't quite understand, the things that didn't quite make sense. Are there opportunities to loan the resource of you for the benefit of them and perhaps doing that on purpose? So the wisdom in that step, where possible, ARE, appreciation, recognition, and encouragement, burn the free fuel to help your teams be successful. Last one, a bonus one, and I'll go quickly on this. My time is about out. This idea to have, what would it look like to have a big impact on the culture of the company that you're at right now, the organization that you're part of? And like, really, really big part of the culture? And this is it. We talk about culture a lot. Hey, I hate saying this for the record. It's going to make me painful to say this, but I'm going to say this for the lesson. Hey, those stupid users, why do they keep clicking on those links? I won't say raise your hand. I've been guilty of saying that. Some of you are giggling. You've said it. Again, I'm not trying to call you. It's easy to say those things because we've got insider information. We know how that works. We know not to click on things. We know the risks that happen. But instead of trying to get everyone to think like us and be like us and do like us, again with the example of TED, that exists for two reasons, and neither one of those words are cyber. Spread ideas. What if we instead tried to mold the culture of the team that we're on to better meet the needs of companies like TED, who's got reasons to exist, like to spread ideas? What if we're the agents of change, instead of waiting on everyone to understand all the cyber and technical and IT things that we do? What do I know? I know that when we do that, you'll be glad that you did. So the wisdom in that step, or the CTA, anyone from Chicago? Nobody? Okay. Not that CTA though. The call to action is, what I hope that you choose to do is to go to your calendar. And on your calendar, make a recurring reminder that says, every Friday at noon, or every Tuesday at 3, or every Monday at 4, whenever you got margin in your calendar right now, I invite you to make a weekly recurring reminder to consider doing 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of the things that I advise to help make your culture add more value, to become more, being able to speak another language, burning free fuel, and looking for ways to add value to your organization. Because what do I know? I know what gets scheduled gets done. And that's it. That was fast. But, well, thank you. Thank you all very, very much. I just love coming here so much. So I've got 3 things I get to give away. So first thing, what's one of the 4 tips that I gave in my talk, How to Change Culture Today? Yes, sir. Speak the language. All right, well done. Practical social engineering book for you. Very, very well. Another tip. Yes, sir. Calendar audit. Why would I want to do a calendar audit? That's right. Only the things that only you can do. Last and not least, wow, this looks really cool. Wireless adapter. Yes, sir. The one with the meetings. Oh my God, if anyone deserves a prize. Yes, sir. There you go. Burning free fuel. Hey, thanks so much. Love coming here. Thanks for coming. Have a great rest of B-Sides.